we are live. You have come to the panel all about Booktube, its influence, future, and culture. I am Nina Niskanen. I will be your moderator today. Technically, I'm she, her, but Finnish has only one personal pronoun, hän. So I will most likely get someone's pronouns wrong, and I apologize profusely. I will also refer to answer to any pronouns. So we're going to start with me asking my panelists to introduce themselves shortly, and we will start with Emily.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily. I run the channel Emiloid. My pronouns are she and her. And I've been on Booktube, gosh, since about early 2017. I've been kind of slowly migrating towards, video essay-ish content, but, I still generally do book and film critique, general media critique. That's me.
Eric?
Sorry, did you say me?
Yes, I did. Sorry.
We're starting great. Hi, I'm Claire Russo. My YouTube channel is also Claire Russo. I talk mostly about books, SFF, sci-fi fandom, but also fantasy. Sci-fi fantasy, but also fandom. By the way, if I'm when I'm extremely rambly like this, and I have an empty bookshelf, I moved yesterday, so yeah, I'm gonna be a little bit like not making tons of sense. So that is me. Caitlin, please talk.
Yeah, I'm Caitlin. So my channel on YouTube is Kitty G. I've been on YouTube since 2013, so quite a long time. And I do the same sort of stuff as these guys, lots of fantasy and sci-fi book reviews, hauls, all the kind of usual stuff on Booktube generally.
Excellent. So,
oh yeah, sorry, I'm also she, her. Did I say that? I don't
me
remember
too.
if I said that.
So, what made you want to become a booktuber? Can we start with Claire this time?
Yeah, sure. So my partner started a YouTube gaming channel like 8 years ago now. It's a more complicated story than that, but in the end he was making videos about games. And he was really having a ball. And at that time I was really struggling with, writing fiction. I was editing this book that I'd been doing for like 3 years. It was a bit of a lot, right? And I thought, wouldn't it be nice to have a thing that's creative work, that's different processes than writing, so that I can, just have something that is a bit more fun and a little less stressful. And also I wanted something that is a long-term creative endeavor that like you do in chunks, and each chunk you can do in like, you can work on it for a day, 2 days, a week, but it's not like a draft of a novel, kind of time. And John was having so much fun, and I was just like, oh, wouldn't it be fun to start a channel? I didn't know about what. And then I saw like a Booktube video and I was like, oh, duh, books, obviously. And yeah, like immediately just thought, what a great idea, let's go.
Awesome. Kitty?
So I got into Booktube because I just went off to university and I didn't really know an awful lot of people at university, and it was kind of the early stages where you're still getting to know people, and I wanted something going on. And it was also the first time that I had a digital camera because I needed it for my university course. So I was going to use that to record on. And I vaguely think I discovered Booktube around the same time, but it was so small in 2013. Like there were a very few amount of people who were doing it, and the people who were doing it were mostly based in the US and were mostly reading young adult fiction, and I was much more into adult fiction and adult fantasy. So I wanted to kind of just start a channel just to connect with other readers, which is still very much what my channel is about to this day. And I just wanted to connect with people and chat about books, because a lot of my real life friends at uni and like real life friends from back home weren't big readers, so I didn't get to chat about books very often. So I think Booktube was definitely the outlet for just chatting to people online about books, and it seemed like a natural fit.
Emily, I know you started out as
Yeah, I did start out as something else. If you look back on my backlog, my most popular video is about Ian Curtis. So I did not start out as a booktuber. I just kind of was, it was really started as a way for me to update what was going on with me. I had just moved to an area for work. So I was basically just posting and talking about whatever, but then I went to NerdCon Nerdfighteria back in early 2017, and I went to a panel run by, I think, Christine Riccio from Poland Bananas Books, and I was like, I should be a booktuber. This is what I should have been doing this whole time. And the rest is history, because I had started to read a ton again, because sometimes uni can kill your reading. And that just seemed like a perfect way to get back into reading again. Yeah.
Cool. So what do you personally consider when you're choosing the topic that you talk about? Like, I know I couldn't find any non-book videos on Kitty's channels, but both Emily and Claire have very differing topics and essays and sometimes vlogs and all that. But we're going to start with Kitty.
Books. Would you believe it?
No, but like, how do you choose which books do you review? And
I am very much a mood reader, and I base a lot of my reading just off of my mood, and everything that appears on my channel is just whatever I've been reading recently. I've done a couple things over the last few years with like Booktube SFF and with the SBFBO Awards, where I've been judging for those. So that kind of dictates some of my reading, because I kind of have to read the books that are on like judging lists. But other than that, I think everything I read is very much just whatever I fancy reading. I'm lucky I get sent a lot of books from publishers. So that also kind of dictates what ends up in the queue, is just what comes into the house. But yeah, I've got a massive bookshelf downstairs. This is my nice bookshelf of all the things I've read. And then I've got a much bigger bookshelf downstairs, which is all the things I've not read, that are just waiting in the queue to join whenever I feel like reading them. So I very much pick it up based on mood, unless it's like an author that I love and they've released a new one that kind of jumps the queue. But most of the time it's mood based, and I like doing reviews, because I find that even though they tend to have less views overall, I get the best discussion with people from my channel when I post a review video. And I think people actually want to talk a bit more on those types of videos, so I enjoy that. But I also do like the classic book hauls and things like that. I did actually have a lot of videos, if you go way back on my channel, that are not book related or like something different, but yeah, they are buried deep deep in the past.
Emily, you will notice a sort of circular.
Yeah. So really, it's based on what I'm very passionate about at the time. Because Booktube is the bedrock of my content, but occasionally I will get very passionate about something, and if it's kind of book related, maybe it's a book adaptation, that's great. But sometimes I do really feel like I have to talk about certain things, and it's good when it branches into something book related. Like I think I've reviewed like a book from the perspective of being a witch, because that's something I do. And because it's also important to bring those different perspectives into the book world as well. It's because sometimes, because I guess you could say I'm almost a mood book YouTuber in a way, because even though you do have a basis, sometimes it just takes you, your creative directions just take you to a certain place. And I think it's worthwhile to kind of flex at those different creative muscles once in a while.
I adore the phrase mood YouTuber. That's perfect. I'm going to steal that with credit, but that is perfect. And actually, that is a great segue to me, because I have been wanting to go more into that direction of, mood YouTube, because I watch a lot of YouTube I watch a lot of Booktube, but I also watch a lot of YouTube that isn't Booktube, and I'm a person who, I love all the crafts, every single one of them, and I always want to try them, and I always have a new thing that I'm like really into. And so I think I'd like to do something where, like maybe a series, I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet, but I'd like to do videos that are like, they'd be tangentially related to SF. They'd be kind of about something SFF or book related, but it'd be like making a thing. But then, if the thing that you're making is a decoration for your bookshelf, or it's, something that is like from a nerd franchise, then that relates, But yeah, for me, the kind of like, what do I do? I guess it kind of depends of the, it kind of depends on the type of video that it is, I suppose. I love a whole video. I love watching unboxing videos, but I really struggle to film them because I don't know, in the past especially when I've been really stressed out and not like and really struggling to kind of go with the first take. So I find the more stressed out I am, the more I'm like, oh, I said a single tiny thing wrong, I'm gonna redo it 5 times. You can't do that with an unboxing. So
I feel that.
I guess
Wrap
I
it
kind
back
of
up
think
and start again.
Yeah.
I mean, you can always have some packing materials handy and just take it
Back
up
up,
all
yeah.
over again.
I like that every one of us had thought about like how you pack it to. I mean, that's actually a really good point, right? Like, it's sometimes you have to think, or sometimes I like to take into account what makes a good video, as well as what I want to do and all of that. Like, obviously what I want to do is what primarily dictates what I'll end up doing, but I think what would make a good video. So I really wanted to do a one of those TBR games that have become way more popular on Booktube over the last few years. I really wanted to do a TBR game, and I started thinking like, well, what do I like about TBR games when I watch them on other people? And I was just thinking like, Cody's TBR game, and other, and Bookopoly, Becca's Bookopoly, like those games, what they do is they do a little bit of the game that like gives them a prompt or whatever, and then they pick a book, they talk about the book. So I was like, I wanted the format to be I didn't want to steal their ideas or whatever, but I was like, what elements of the format function for me? And then I made up something else based on that. So that I thought it would make a good video. It would be entertaining as a video, but then it was also the thing that I wanted to do, which was tie it into D&D, so that I could justify buying a bunch of pretty dice.
Fair.
I mean, who doesn't need an excuse to buy pretty dice?
I mean, not me.
Fair. So moving on from that, like obviously there's on YouTube there's always an effort to entertain, as you mentioned, but is there any other impact that you would all like to have on your viewers? I almost said readers, but anyway, Emily, please.
Oh, So I guess something I noticed that people on my commenters, they like telling me, well, Emily, you're so thoughtful about these in-depth reviews, and I guess I like having effect on people rather than simply just being fluff entertainment for people. Because I mean, it really wasn't who I was in the first place to just be one of those really just like kind of a fluff entertainer. Because I come from a certain a literature background, and it's not in my nature. Peppy in in the way that some other YouTubers are. So I think I like to give people well thought out content, and I'd like them to come away really having a different perspective on something, whether I'm educating them about, I don't know, my paganism, or maybe thinking about them from maybe giving them a perspective from, I don't know, as a person of color.
Mm.
Something like hopefully the
Is it me or is it Emily?
Sorry, I think Emily's breaking up a little bit.
Oh, good. So it's not me.
Okay. No, this part of the house is the internet is janky.
Mm.
It's that.
I think we got most of your answer.
Okay, that's good.
Claire.
Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of what Emily said. Like, I think for me, I think there is a lot of inherent value in entertaining people. I think if 2020 has shown us anything, it's that, sometimes like just seeing something that makes you happy, like that's really valuable. So I think if you can do that, that's really valuable in itself. But I think for me, I also want to talk, about the community. And I will kind of, I guess, temper that by saying that I feel a little bit more part of like con-going, world-con, sci-fi, sci-fi book Twitter type of community than necessarily Booktube, because I am by nature a lurker and I have to make myself work really hard to comment on the videos, which is how you become part of the Booktube community, whether or not you make things yourself. Like you can make all the videos you want. If you don't reply to your own comments, for instance, or go comment on other people's videos, it's much harder to meet people. So that's something I'm working on. But yeah, like for me, I enjoy being of use to the community. So things that I do, like my SFF news series genre-wise, that's more of a, hey, this is providing some information, some valuable information. The kind of D&D pick my reading, that's more pure entertainment. I did a video one time. I did a video before the apocalypse about advice for convention going for in-person convention. But I've had people tell me that they watched it when they were packing before a con, and I was just like, "What? This is amazing! What?" My favorite feeling related to Booktube is like whenever anybody comes up to me, Twitter, in the comments on Twitter, in person, whatever, and says, "You know what? I bought this book because you gushed about it. I read it. I bloody loved it." Like that's the best. If you can make people buy a book and they love it, like that's perfect. For me, that's the ultimate goal.
That's awesome. Kitty?
Absolutely. I mean, I agree with what you guys have both said as well. But I think because my channel is quite book review focused, one of my highlights is exactly like Claire just said, where I find a book that I particularly like it with like SBFBO, which is about self-published books, where I can find a book that literally no one has heard of, and I can yell about it on my channel and be like, "This was amazing, please read it." And then people come back to me over the next few months for a while, and they're like, I read it, I loved it, I'm so pleased that you found this author and that I can support them because I would never have heard of them. So I think that is one of the best feelings, definitely. And like talking to people, authors and viewers of the channel and just other booktubers as well about books has always been my goal, really. It's never been about entertainment for my channel. It's always been like, if you don't like me, you can go somewhere else, but if you do, stick around and we'll have a chat. Like that's kind of all it's been. And I've done videos in the past where I've kind of focused on a theme of some kind. If there's a particular thing going on in the world or something that I want to highlight, a particular theme of some kind, then I have done that. But it just it depends what's going on and what I'm in the mood for.
Moving on from that, do you think there's a difference in diversity between Booktube and the wider book review community or book review people? And Claire, if you would go first.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because I'm not sure how I would define the wider book review community, because I think, you know, Booktube is a community and a fandom, but even within that, there's different niches. If you look at, you know, even book Twitter earlier, I called it SFF book Twitter, you know, you've got a lot of people talking about books on Instagram. Somebody in Discord chat was asking if there are bookstagrammers, and there are plenty of them. They are so talented. Like, I wish I could take photos like that. Whew. But like, I think the answer for me is yes, and it depends, because I suppose it depends what communities you're comparing. But I would say with Booktube, there are some barriers to entry, right? It's not free. It's not, you know, you have to have a reliable internet. That's not a given. You know, it takes a long time to upload videos if your internet is bad. You can film and edit videos on a smartphone, that's fine, but then you need to have a smartphone or a camera. I mean, you know, there's plenty of, and buying books, right? I've heard, especially from, booktubers who are outside of, you know, Western Europe or the US and Canada, you know, talking about getting their hands on books, right? Like people who are, you know, trying to get books, like, you know, if you're, you know, in like say North Africa and you're wanting to buy a book, the shipping is going to be wild. I mean, Australian booktubers talk about getting things shipped from elsewhere, and sometimes stuff isn't published, and you know, well, Nina, I'm sure, could speak to ordering books from abroad. So there are loads of barriers to entry, which means that it's not as inclusive as it could be. And of course, it is YouTube, and YouTube, you know, YouTube has a racism problem because, you know, society has a racism problem, and it translates, you know, there's a who codes the website and like what, I mean, you know, of course it's like an insidious systemic thing rather than like the community itself decides to be a meanie, but that definitely exists. So it's not like it's perfect, all inclusive, but I think, say, like the booktube community at large versus the Worldcon SFF community, yeah, it's more inclusive.
Kitty.
I mean, well summed up. Yeah, that I agree with pretty much everything you've said. I do think Booktube has developed a lot. I think when I started, it was very, very white, and it has got much more diverse. And there are so many channels out there now from across the world, creators everywhere, which has been really nice to see, because previously it was such a small pool. So it's been really, really nice to get a bigger, more diverse look at people from everywhere and all their types of reading. And you tend to find that if you watch channels that are very different from you, whether it's where they're from or how they're brought up or what they believe, you find books that you'd never have heard of. So I would thoroughly encourage people to seek out something other than you on Booktube, because it's all very well watching people who talk about the same 5 books over and over because they're nice, but there's a lot of people out there who are really deserving of just checking out their channels and like finding out the amazing stuff that they're reading as well. So I think it's definitely got better, and I think it's certainly something that if you take the time to actually go on the internet and search a bit, then you can find loads of creators from all sorts of places in Booktube and just YouTube in general. But it does take a bit of effort because the YouTube algorithm is not favorable to everyone, for sure.
Emily?
Yeah, no, I would agree. I would say even as of 5 years ago, I would say diversity is better than it was, in a short period of time, because I think there, the good thing is we're becoming a lot more conscious of it, especially I would say last year when BLM had a re-explosion. I would say we're just becoming more conscious of that sort of thing and trying to empower. Let's say voices of color, for instance, in the community. I would say we do have some ways to go, I think, because still I would say the Booktube community. I'm not for me. I'm also really not sure about the wider book review community, because of course you're going to have like certain demographics being favored in certain circles. But I would say, like Kitty was saying, it does take a lot of effort. It takes a bit more effort and a bit more conscious effort, because sometimes it's easy to just be like, oh, well, this person is like a big voice on Twitter, I'll just follow them. This person's a big voice on here. They've got some subs. Let's go. Let's subscribe to that person. And sometimes you feel like, okay, well, after a while, sometimes they just tend to talk about a lot of similar things, and maybe I want to look for a different voice. And of course, for a person of color like myself, it is becoming more important to find more people who also come from a similar-ish experience, just like with any other circle in YouTube, because let's take makeup YouTube for instance. I'm gonna maybe this is a bit of a tangent. It was important for me to find those types like other Asian YouTubers, because we'll have the same, because we're so different in our coloring, skin type, body shape, and that sort of thing biologically, because and some things that work for you don't work for other people, and vice versa. So, and I guess a very similar thing applies to Booktube as well. I apologize if I'm cutting out a bit, but you also sometimes seek like-minded perspectives. And that was very rambling. I'm sorry about that.
No, it was brilliant.
Yeah.
No, and just something that occurred to me as well while we were talking is like, obviously inclusivity in Booktube and the wider Booktube community and reading communities, it could be who is talking about books, but it's also whose books are getting talked about. I think a lot of people, and I'm going to very much include myself in this, because just books by white authors and books that are originally written in English and books that are written by US, Canada, UK authors get more publicity. I mean, not going to go into like all the... If you don't believe that, just like look around, because it's very obvious and there's a lot of evidence. So I'm not going to justify it, but I will say, like, it takes an effort, like an actual conscious effort to diversify your reading and have a reading experience that's inclusive, and make sure that you're reading by authors of color, by authors from all around the world, and reading books. If you're reading a book by a Black author, sometimes it's about the Black experience, and sometimes it's about something else entirely, and sometimes it's there's a spectrum, right? And I guess if people don't want to do that, that's fine, but like, it is a choice to not do it, just as it is a choice to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. On a somewhat related tangent, where was I? Right.
Sorry.
When talking about the work of an author, Claire and Emily, you both mentioned who gets reviewed. Do you consider the idea of death of an author, death of the author, or do you have existing relationships with authors that affect your review? And I can't remember who was first last.
I'm sorry, I ruined your order. I realized that. My bad.
I think it might be your turn, Claire.
No, I think I went first last time.
Okay, in that case, it's Kitty's turn.
Okay. So authors and my relationship with them, it depends completely on how I got the book and why I got the book. A lot of books that I'm sent by publishers, I just get sent whatever they've got, which is very much largely dominated by white male authors. Although I have in recent years tried to kind of get rid of those ones before I show them on the channel if they just don't appeal, and kind of only show the ones that are getting a bit more interesting. And I think publishers are responding and kind of getting a bit more diverse. But then the authors that come from like the smaller competitions that I've judged, I definitely know them a lot more and kind of interact with the authors a lot more from those areas, because of just the nature of the competition of being like a small published author. They're much more willing to chat and like, feedback and stuff. So it really depends where the book came from, what my relationship is. I definitely am a fangirl of some authors as well. So, if Robin Hobb brings out a book, I'm going to love it just on principle. But, there's certain authors. I wouldn't say I try and actively avoid many authors, but there are definitely some authors who I wouldn't go out and buy their book. I would borrow it, or I would try and get it another way because I've heard rumors of what they've done or seen evidence of what they've done, and it's not stuff I agree with. So I do think there is an element of that, but obviously you can't be held accountable for everything an author does everywhere, and you never know the inside of everyone. So it's just a balance of like, if you know that one author is really not a nice person, try not to support them, but you don't have to, in my mind, not read their work. You just have to think about how you get it, and like whether you want to support them with money, or whether you want to review their book and talk about it and give them praise, or whether you want to kind of just read it for yourself, get it from the library or borrow it from a friend, but not actually promote that author necessarily.
Emily.
So I guess for me, it's not, death of the author is not so simple as dividing an author from their work, because I think no matter what, I think a person's work is a part of a whole human being, because humans are complicated and flawed. So a lot of this, I guess I judge on very much a case-by-case basis. One of the factors is which is the author actually dead? Can they profit from my work? Now, let's take Marion Zimmer Bradley, for instance. I'll compare two different cases and how I deal with them. Marion Zimmer Bradley, I think some of us may know what happened there. A very abusive, let's say, of her daughter. I won't go into the details, but her work was very influential for a lot of people going into neo-paganism. And I'll be real, I think Mists of Avalon is brilliant. Like, I think it's a really beautiful book. And so for a while, I was very turned off of reading any of her work, but I thought, well, these days, I think her publisher donates money from her books to, I think, charities to support people who have suffered that kind of abuse. So I'm like, well, maybe I'll go back and revisit like that aspect, because I mean, maybe this aspect of this person is interesting to probe and think about, and I would hopefully be supporting people who've gone through that kind of abuse. And so I'm a bit more open to it now, just because, she's dead. She doesn't take my money. She can't use my money. Now, let's look at another example. Cixin Liu, who wrote The Three-Body Problem. supports genocide, or is a proponent of the Uyghur, what's going on with the Uyghurs over in China at the moment, and was very enthusiastic about it. And so, and because of that, as a Hong Kong activist, solidarity with the Uyghurs is very important to me. So I'm probably not going to read his books or support him further because he can profit from my coin. And a lot of people were like, "Oh, well, can't you just be understanding of the political system that he's in?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't want to support a system that encourages that behavior, and because that's what my money essentially does." So I guess you can see how I would judge two cases very differently, and it's not so cut and dry.
As an aside, I just want to thank you for talking about this on your one of your videos at least, because I had never heard of this and it came as a complete surprise to me, and it would, yeah, no. Claire may have dropped out, I think.
Maybe.
I don't see her.
So we'll just move on without Claire. What is the impact you think that Booktube is having at the moment, and what kind of impact do you think it will have on fiction going forward? Especially since, well, for example, like Kitty, you do a lot of smaller presses and such. Do you think that Booktube is going to be able to provide a sort of platform for smaller companies, smaller authors? Emily.
Well, I hope my hope is that Booktube will well, let's not say hope so much. I can see Booktube influencing publishing a lot more. I don't know how big that change will be. I think, but I can see how people are starting to go along with certain trends now because of Booktube. I can definitely see that happening, and I think I hope that people don't try it and like with any sort of a trend or popularity. I hope people don't necessarily chase it or chase what's going on with Booktube, but more kind of taking it into account because I think that kind of creative integrity is important. And but I can see, but I think an example I saw, maybe not so much of Booktube, but Book Twitter the other day was more where I think an author got just review bombed or something because I think she criticized or she got on a book reviewer's case about about like what was it, a review or something. And I'm like, okay, well, I can see how Booktube, because of how well we can mobilize with each other and on different platforms as well, how we can like sort of influence what authors I guess how authors not so much publicize themselves is, I don't know if that's the correct word, how authors try to appeal to their to their readers and to the reading community as a whole. I can see that see the community going in that direction.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean the same. I think it's changed a lot, the response to Booktube over the time since 2013 when I started. Booktube was relatively unheard of, and you could contact a publisher and they'd be like, okay, well, you make a video about books? That's a bit weird. Whereas nowadays, like, Booktube is definitely recognized by publishing. Both the big publishers and the really tiny presses are kind of getting more used to the idea. And I think the difference with Booktube to like blogging, for instance, is that you've kind of got that immediate face-to-face, which you don't have with a blog. So some people really enjoy sitting and reading a review that's really well put together and thought out. And then other people just really enjoy watching a reviewer who will sit down and chat to them. And it feels a lot more personal, I think, when you've got an actual reviewer in front of you and you're sort of sitting there watching the video. So I do think there's a more personal connection that a lot of publishers are seeing have an effect. And I think it's particularly evident on small books, like authors who don't have a lot of reviews, and then they get a booktuber of some kind to review their book and it goes positively. You can instantly see the sales go up for them, which is amazing. But then even with books that are pushed by publishers, like big publishers, you can still see that those numbers do increase when a particularly popular booktuber kind of goes out there and says good things about the author. And I think, like you were saying, the perception that authors have online, the way that their audience sees them, is kind of very much something that Booktube can have a big influence on.
Yes.
And I think just as it can go positively, it can go negatively. So authors need to be a little bit wary when they're online and how they come across, because nowadays people can find out everything. And if you are being really awful in some way, then people find that out and they don't like that. And Booktube can mobilize in the same way that Twitter and Bookstagram and all the other online content places very much can. So I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Claire, do you want to weigh in on what kind of impact do you think Booktube is having currently, and or you see having an impact having going forward? I'm definitely able to speak English. You're muted.
Yeah, you're not making any sound. Call yourself a booktuber.
Sorry, I muted myself because I was typing to try and get my internet back frantically, and then of course. Okay, so I was going to say is I'm not sure that I'm seeing an impact from Booktube on fiction, as in on the fiction specifically, but I think in the industry we're definitely seeing an impact. Especially like big authors getting really, really fancy arcs because, you know, they're going to show up on Booktube and on Bookstagram, and they are, you know, getting sent so early so that people show them off for 6 months. I don't know if you've mentioned this already, but like
No.
Mark Lawrence is getting like 3 or 4 different arcs of his next book, and it's like
Jay Kristoff, right?
That's a different person. Yeah. I was like, it was a white man, so, you know, because obviously it was, because, you know, as we mentioned before. Sorry, I was thinking about Mark Lawrence because in the Discord they were talking about which I always find very amusing because I always want to pronounce it like that in my head. Anyway, Jay Kristoff is getting multiple arcs of his next book. And it's like, well, an arc is specifically a review copy. I've gotten arcs that are just like a beige page with the name of the book on it and the name of the author.
Yeah.
You know, they are not for sale. They are, I mean, obviously some people sell them and it's bad, but like specifically they're not for sale because they are not the final product, you know, because changes are going to be made. And the fact that they are making such fancy arcs, like I got an arc last year for a book. It had foil on it. Like, they are spending money on those arcs.
Yeah.
And that is why. Meantime, I read mostly on audiobook, and like that is just not as good for Booktube as like showing up a book. So I still
audio
get loads
covers
of
are
arcs
bad
from
for that. Like
publishers.
a lot of audio covers are terrible.
So we have some questions from the audience, and I apologize to the audience members that I will probably butcher your names, but Jessica A. Kaysen asks, do you find it annoying that some some channels combine Booktube and AuthorTube, or does that seem natural to you? I think Kitty?
I think channels are what you want them to be, so I don't really have a problem with anyone doing whatever they want to do on their channel. There's nothing stopping you from unsubscribing from a person's channel and just like going elsewhere. There's always someone doing what you want. I think it's just a case of finding it. But I think a lot of people combine various hobbies and various things that they do in one place on the internet, and I think YouTube is kind of a good way of doing that. So I don't necessarily have a problem myself with it.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's way more annoying to me if I'm watching someone's video and I can tell that they're not being genuinely interested in what they're talking about, and then they're trying to like keep to a format or whatever. Also, I was as a hobby as like someday I'm going to be a great novelist when I started making videos, and then I stopped because it's really hard. So you know, I don't really have a leg to set, right? That's, I mean, one of the reasons I read books and I'm like, oh my god, this is mind-blowing, is that like it's really hard, and then you see it, you read it, and it's awesome. So but one of the, I mean, also I made videos about NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, when I first started, so like I don't have a leg to stand on, I've literally done it before, so.
Emily?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, we're all personalities, and that's a lot of what people are coming for. I mean, yeah, they come for books, but a lot of them are becoming for us and what we individually do. And I guess for me, I think if I just wanted to, there's so many booktubers on this platform, right? And there's so many people doing a lot of the very similar type videos, and if you just kind of go with just with the flow of things, you're not really unique from a lot of those other people. There's so many other people who already do the book tags thing way better than I do. They're already coming up with that sort of content. They don't need my voice and that sort of thing. And so I'm like, well, I'd rather kind of have my own unique take on things and my own different types of videos, because otherwise, how am I any different from 90% of these other YouTubers or booktubers?
We're starting to run out of time and we still have a lot of questions. So I'm just going to throw all the, the questions and just answer it free for all. What makes a good unboxing video?
Lots of boxes.
Let's see. Well, I guess I don't do that many unboxing videos. I guess one time I did you sort of difference in on it by including my boyfriend, who likes to make snarky comments about all of the items that come in boxes. And so he would just make fun of all of it, which I think is I think it was obviously it wasn't like, oh great, oh I love this item, but I think it entertains people in a way that was a bit different. Coming from me saying that I don't like being a fluff entertainer, and I think but also I think your honest opinion on the items is good. I think boxes in general should, for instance, do better Lord of the Rings merch. I think the state of Lord of the Rings merch in boxes right now is not great. That's me being real.
The right box for the right person. I subscribed to Illumicrate for a long time, and that's a YA box, and like I don't read a ton of YA, so much of the things were about books I hadn't read, and I was just like, I really like the company. I like Daphne, who runs the company. I was like really excited to get a subscription as a treat, but it's like it's not the right box for me. So like I don't think I'd make a very entertaining unboxing of that, because it's just, I'm just like, oh, here's the thing that I don't know what it is. So I need to find the right SFF, like adult science fiction and fantasy subscription box, and I have not yet. Someone tell me.
Yeah.
I can possibly suggest some, and it comes with coffee.
Yes, please. Please give it to me.
I don't know if it's available outside of the US, but I have friends who are getting some very good content out of that. Anyway, A lot of Andrea Kritz says a lot of short fiction is free. Could it be more accessible for YouTubers to get in on that? And Wendy Nickel says curious about that as well. Are there any short story short story tubers?
Ooh,
Not
I know there are
exclusively, but
definitely
there's
people who do read a lot of short
yeah.
fiction, but yeah, I'm not sure I know any that are exclusively short fiction, but they must be out there. But there are a lot of people who do talk about short fiction in general in the SFF world. A lot of magazines that come out, like online magazines, are great starting points with that. So there are loads of them out there, and I think a lot of them have been, probably well talked about over Booktube in general.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jay Viner asks, when tubers get free books from publishers, is there an expectation of a certain kind of review? And also, how does a newbie get into Booktube?
Well, look for getting into Booktube, just search Booktuber recommendations in YouTube, and you'll see like loads of us have done videos where we're like, oh my god, these people are awesome. And usually in these videos, people will tell you why to subscribe to somebody, and will tell you also like a video or two that they've really enjoyed. So that can be a really good starter place. I know there's also a playlist of Black Booktubers that came out of the BLM, well, not the movement, but you know, that was made in June last year. For the expectation from publishers, I mean, they can have an expectation if they wanna, but no, it's not gonna happen. And booktubers in general are pretty good at saying when they've received something for review from the publisher. So
it depends, I think, how you interact with the publishers. So for me personally, like, I don't agree to anything. If I get sent a book and I like the sound of it, I'll show it, and if I want to read it, I'll review it, and that's kind of all I'll promise. And that's the same for like individual authors if they send their books to me as well. So I think if you make that clear that you're not favoriting a book because it's been sent to you, personally, I don't agree with like, just because someone sent you a book, you should give it a good review. I very much think you should be yourself and say what you think. So,
yeah, I think I care how someone approaches me. If someone is just like, oh, just review my work, can you read it? I feel like maybe you've sent this message to about 20 other people, but if someone reaches out to me and says, hey, I enjoy your content, and or maybe it shows that they actually cared about me as a reviewer, and care that my voice could contribute, then I'd be more inclined, I think.
Yeah, maybe it gets higher up the TBR at that point.
Yeah.
Crystal Kirkham asks, on a sort of related note, what is a good way for smaller publishers to start a relationship with a booktuber?
That's a good question.
I think both for smaller publishers and also for independently published authors, just think about it the way you would do, like, think about it like writing an email for a job, or for a job interview or something. Or I mean, in fact, for authors, it's, I would say, somewhat similar to looking for an agent. Like, basically, make yourself a short list and make it not too long. Write a template that like explains what your book is like, and leave some space for saying why you like a person's video. Then actually like look at what they read and review and like, and find somebody who reads and reviews and likes the same things that you write, and then like send them an email at the email that is linked in like on their website or on the YouTube. And you say hello, you call them by the proper name, you make sure that you've like copied your email from like whatever word processor into Notepad before putting it in the email, so it's all in the same font, it doesn't look like a template. And you say why you like them so that it doesn't look like you've sent it to 5 million people, like Emily was saying. But like, I think for anybody who wants to start working with a booktuber, like just do a bit of research and be specific and be intentional with who you go with, and don't just go with the person with the like largest subscriber number, because everyone has gone for this person and she has too many books.
Anyone else?
I agree with all of that. My caveat would be please don't put typos in your email, because I'm not going to read your book if your email has typos. I'm an editor, so it's a particular pet peeve of mine. But yeah, I really struggle with someone who's written a 5-line email and got quite a few typos. I can't do that. Can't do the book by them. Just check, spell check. It's fine.
Emily, anything to add?
Okay, so I think this goes a bit along with what I said before about how you reach out to someone. But I think I guess as someone who I think Claire cited a similar example, it's kind of like applying for a job. I guess for me, a lot of times I'm a PhD student in real life, so sometimes I want to reach out to people for academics for maybe because I want help or something, or I want to talk to them about a subject area. I should read up on their work, right? And so it makes them feel like that you actually appreciated them and their work and their voice, and also makes them more willing to help you. And I think because it shouldn't be so transactional. I guess don't treat everything super transactionally. I think because this is all about relationships between people at the end of the day, people that you want to have like an actual meaningful relationship with. And if you want it to be that way, you shouldn't treat it just like a business, like a tit for tat, because that's not the basis of an actual a good any sort of relationship. So don't be a transactional person.
That's a very good thought to end on. Anyone just very quickly, we are very out of time. Where can people find you online? The links have already been shared on the Discord, and the conversation is still ongoing and very, very active. But for the people who are not on the Discord, where can people find you online? Emily.
So my channel is called Emeloid. You can probably find it in my name on this video chat, and also on Twitter I am Emeloid_reads. Same on Instagram. And you can also, I think I have a Goodreads linked in my YouTube channel, and I think it's also called Emeloid as well.
Kitty?
So Kitty G will kind of take you to most of my stuff, but I think on Twitter and Booktube, not Booktube, on Twitter and Instagram, I am Kitty G Books, just to be specific. I also link my Goodreads in all of my videos, so you can find me from them.
Claire?
So most of my things are under Claire Russo. So YouTube is youtube.com/channel/Claire Russo. My Twitter is @Claire Russo. My Instagram is @Claire S. Russo, because there's a French model who already has my Instagram with my name, and she's very pretty. But also, like, I almost never post on Instagram, so so there you go. I'm gonna hang out in the Discord a little bit because there's loads of questions and it's interesting.
Yeah, me too.
Yes, there are a lot of questions there, and thank you to all the people who have been participating on Discord, and thank you to all my panelists, and thank you to Flights of Foundry, and I will see you around the con.
Thanks for asking questions.
Thank you. And thank you.